we're going to start out with the Pera review, problem number 1. And so problem number 1 basically gives us an ellipse, and it's at the center, so we know we got x squared over something plus y squared over something is equal to 1. They have the equals 1 on the other side. Now, because the shape is like this and the two foci that they gave me were over here and over here, I know that this number over the x, under the x, has to be the higher number. And this number has to be the lower number. And so we can already eliminate letter B is out and letter D is out. So the next question is, what do we know? Well, c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared in this case. And because this goes from 0, 0 to 3, 0, that means that this is equal to 3, which means c squared is equal to 9. So we need a squared minus b squared to equal 9. So does 25 minus 16 equal 9? Yep. Does 10 minus 8 equal 9? Nope. So this has to be the 25 and 16 choice. So my answer for problem number 1 is A. For problem number 2, we have an ellipse, and because this is a sideways ellipse, I know the x is going to come first, and the y is going to come second, and then I want to figure out where the center is. The center is at -3, 2, which means this is x plus 3 squared, and y minus 2 squared. Now the distance from here to here, if I count, goes from -3 to -1, so that's 2. So 2 squared is equal to 4. And the distance up is equal to, from 2 to 5 is equal to 3. Which means 3 squared is equal to 9. And so I put a 9 underneath here. And there's my answer. Problem number 3, they give us this problem where we have a semi-major axis of 2 square roots of 13, and then we have these two things, which means that we have the center right in between them. And so 1 plus -5 divided by 2 is equal to -2, so this point is at 1, -2 in the center. So we got x minus 1 squared, and we have y plus 2 squared. This should be plus and plus, so that's a -1. And so underneath, I know my circle goes like this. So they told me that this is equal to 2 square roots of 13, which means this part is going to be equal to the square root of 13, and this part down here is equal to the square root of 13. And so the square root of 13 squared is 13, and that goes underneath the y because that's going up and down. Now the next thing that we need to know is, well, how far is it from here to the focus? So from, let's see, -1, -2 to -1, -5 is 3, which means c is equal to 3. So a squared minus b squared is equal to 3 squared, which is 9. Subtract 13 on both sides, and -4 is equal to -b squared. This negative and this negative both become positive, so b squared is equal to 4. And so b squared is the one underneath the x this time. And so there's our answer. Alright. So in this particular problem, they want us to go through each one and decide which of the conic sections. So starting with the one that I think is the easiest, I should do this in orange or red. This one is going to be the parabola because it only has 1 squared. So x is squared, not y. And so that's the parabola. The next easiest one is this one, because we have this x squared minus y squared, which means this one is the hyperbola. The next one, well, we have two to choose from. I'll come down here. Since the 3x squared and the 3y squared have a plus, and the 3 and the 3 are the same, this one is the circle. And over here, in the x squared plus 4y squared, the 1 and the 4 are different, which means this is the ellipse. And nothing mattered except for the ones that were squared. The 10x minus y didn't matter, the 20x didn't matter. All we're worried about is how many squares there are and whether we're adding them or subtracting them. Alright, so which words characterize each type of function? In the circle, well, in all of them, well, not all of them, we have the center and we have the radius. In most of them we have the center. In the ellipse, we have the center, we have the vertices, we also have the foci, the major axis, and the minor axis that we've talked about. For the hyperbola, we have the center again. We have vertices. By the way, for this one, we only have 2 vertices. For the ellipse, we have 4 vertices. We still have the foci. And for the parabola, we have the vertex, the axis of symmetry, we have the focus, because there's only one, and we have the directrix. And that was all of the words that we used to characterize these conic sections. Alright, for problem number 6, you can read this, but the private investigator has a cost for X of $500 plus $80 per hour. So when they ask what does C negative 1, that means the inverse of $1,220, that basically means, if I need to write this out in a sentence. Alright, so in order to get this, I'm going to switch. Basically, I'm going to leave this as C equals 500 plus 80x. And I'm going to solve this for x. So I'm going to subtract the 500. So I got C minus 500 equals 80x. And divide by 80. So C minus 500 over 80 is equal to x, which is really the inverse of the cost. So how much time did the investigator work for $1,220? Plug that in. And so it turned out to be 9 hours. Alright, so we need to find the inverse function. So x is equal to y plus 3 squared minus 1. As we solve for y again, we get x plus 1 equals y plus 3 squared. Square root, and when I square root, we need plus or minus x plus 1 equals y plus 3. Then I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides, and I wind up with negative 3 plus or minus the square root of x plus 1 equals y. Now at the very beginning it said x had to be greater than or equal to negative 2. So I'm going to plug in a number that's bigger than negative 2, so I'm going to plug in 0. When I plug in 0, f of 0 is equal to 8. So since 8 is the answer here, the question is, should I use plus or minus down here? Well, since 8 is... So down here I need the answer of 8 comma 0. So if I do negative 3 plus the square root of 8 plus 1, I get an answer of 0. If I do negative 3 minus the square root of 8 plus 1, I get the answer of negative 6. Therefore, I want to use this one, which is the plus. So I got negative 3 plus the square root of x plus 1 equals the inverse. Alright, for this first one, there's two problems here. We're going to do g of h of x, which means I'm going to take this and plug it in there. And when I do that, I get 2 parentheses x minus 2x squared plus 3. So that would be 2x minus 4x squared plus 3. If I rewrite this in order, it would be negative 4x squared plus 2x plus 3, but I'm not sure which order they're going to give it to you in the multiple choice. So one of those two will be your answer. For part B, I'm going to take this and plug it in here and here. And so this is going to be h of g of x is equal to 2x plus 3 minus 2 times 2x plus 3 squared. Now when you do this, you got 2x plus 3 minus 2. When you multiply this, you need to make sure that you multiply it out properly to get 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. Distribute, and we wind up with that, remembering to distribute the negative 2. Negative 8x squared stays the same. 2x minus 24x is negative 22x. 3 minus 18 is negative 15. Alright, so the first thing that we have is we're trying to find the inverse of 2. So the easy way to do this, because I don't really want to do this, is because this is basically saying that y equals 2. So what I'm going to do is, in my calculator, I'm going to do y equals 2 and y equals x divided by x plus 1. Remember to make sure that this is in parentheses. When you find the intersection, you need to move close to the actual point. So they'll tell you that x equals negative 2 when y equals 2. So x equals negative 2 is my answer. Finally, the last problem for this video, I will go ahead and do problems number 11 through 20 on the next video, is to write the inverse relation of these points. And the first thing you do in any inverse problem is you change x and y. And so This is the inverse.